How did we get here as a culture? I'm not a researcher, but from what I know, from knowledge I've acquired over time, from, just off the cuff from my brain, women started going to work for long hours of time, outside of their home, leaving their children to be cared for by others and needing to have other ways of, of being fed. That's one aspect.
Utilized, we are still short millions of hands. We must call upon women. All over the United States, women are called upon to leave their homes and take jobs. Among our young unmarried women and among older women whose children are grown, we have a large reserve. They discover that factory work is usually no more difficult than housework. Employers find that women can do many jobs as well as men, some jobs better. Tens of thousands of women are already at work in aircraft. More are being added as fast as they apply. This solves the breadwinning problem for many families whose men are at war. The government's policy is that women should get the same pay that men get for similar work. Where necessary, machinery is adapted for women's use. When a hand drill weighs heavily on feminine muscles, the lazy arm drill is introduced to take off the strain.
So yeah, being outside of the house and or away from your child for long periods of time, that's one component. I did not live, back when breastfeeding was like the majority practice. I didn't grow up in a place, let me say, where breastfeeding was the majority practice. But I imagine that if in a culture where breastfeeding was the majority practice, mothers had to be with their children the majority of the time, even if they were working mothers. Let's say it's a mother doing commerce, like at the marketplace, like a mother who does some kind of business or whatever. She was probably wearing, I feel like they do this in Africa, wearing her child on her back or wearing her child, however, like her child was with her wherever she was going, but as women started going into the workplace, like into places where children, let's say, don't fit. I don't know, like where children are not allowed or where it's not appropriate to bring your child, and women were leaving their children for long periods of time. That's something that would, of course, have decreased breastfeeding in the culture.
When married women with small children have to take jobs, everything possible will be done to provide day care for the children.
If you're out working for, 8 hours a day and you're away from your child for that long, certainly you are not going to be able to breastfeed for long. The longer you're away from your kids, you're just not going to have a successful breastfeeding journey. The more women started going out into the workplace and like not taking their children with them, they were, of course, breastfeeding less as well, because there is a correlation between being around your child. Like literally, breastfeeding is a full-time job. You have to do it around the clock, especially while the children are young. And that's how your supply is maintained as well. Not being able to be around your child was a hindrance. Also, the introduction of formula and like the aggressive marketing tactics of formula companies is a part of why, as culture has shifted, we breastfeed less and less. Once formula was invented, they marketed it like crazy. They marketed it as almost better than breast milk.
A dream come true after all the months of waiting. Your baby, all yours. So tiny, so helpless, so dependent on you. To feel happy and secure, your baby needs you and the love you give him. To be healthy, he needs the right kind of milk. Pet milk is processed to make it especially suitable for babies. 50 million babies have thrived happily on this form of milk. Doctors know it is safe, easy for babies to digest, and of course fortified with vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. Naturally, you want the best for your baby. Your own doctor can tell you there is no better, safer choice than pet evaporated milk. More babies are being raised on pet milk formulas than on any other brand.
They have lied to us. They market not only very aggressively, but also deceptively. And that's a reason why people breastfeed less and less. As people started breastfeeding less and less, I think there are problems that increased. Like, it's like a lost art now. So like as it was less common in society, I feel like we as a society like collectively sort of forgot how to breastfeed. So now trying to reintroduce it, I feel like there's so much help that's needed. Um, I feel like in a culture where it's normal, you probably don't necessarily need a professional to help you figure out how to breastfeed. You could probably ask your mom or your, a local midwife or, your cousin, your aunt, whatever. But now you need like a professional, like IBCLC certified lactation consultant, in other words, to help you learn how to breastfeed because like nobody around you did it and you don't know where to get help. And even the ones who did it around you, they got so much help that they don't necessarily know how to help you. And there's also like a lot of sensitivity, a lot of shame, there's so many things. I think also like, um, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is that breastfeeding became like an awkwardness in the culture. So it's not that normal to see people breastfeeding out in public. So I think that there's a shame element. And I also think there's an element of like there's this notion that started going around. Oh, you know what? It's just like culture became more sensitive overall. Like we see this even in politics now, where that politics have created like the vibe around politics is so like heightened. Like everybody's emotions are so heightened. Everything's so divisive. Da 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 da. So it's that same thing with formula and versus breastfeeding. They started being pitted against each other, whereas formula, what the invention of formula is a net good, you could say. Like, there are instances where it is hard or impossible to breastfeed. And well, I don't know. That could be argued that it's a net good because in the days when formula wasn't invented, there were wet nurses, right? Like you would give your child to someone else to breastfeed them. And maybe someone else's breast milk is still better than formula. I shouldn't even say maybe because we see where in hospitals, they're taking donations of breast milk to this day, right? And especially for NICU babies, like for premature babies and babies who are in the NICU, because that milk is really, really good for them. It's good for every baby. So yeah. So actually, I don't know if the invention of formula was necessarily a good thing because where that a mother couldn't do it, maybe it would have been for the best for them to just, for it to be normalized still in the culture that they could use a friend or a family member to nurse their child on their behalf. But in any case, yeah, there's that aspect where we're just not used to seeing it in the culture. But what I was saying was, people, this quote started going around like fed is best. Like it became like a popularized saying. And I guess because mothers who gave their children formula were feeling shamed, I guess. But I don't think there's necessarily anything to feel ashamed about. I think in parenthood and in adulthood, there are wins and losses. There's what's ideal and there's what's, not as ideal, but that's life. We can't like be perfect at everything. So I think really what it is people are oversensitive and, it's hard for them to admit that they, struggled to be successful in the area of breastfeeding. And so they started, passing around this saying, fed is best. But that has nothing to do with anything. Obviously, fed is best. We all know that. Of course, fed is best. But when it comes to breast milk versus formula, we're talking about one nutritional source versus another nutritional source. And if we're going to compare breast milk to formula, breast milk wins every time by a long shot. So breast milk is the best milk you can give to your child. Subsequently, formula. And, I don't know if there's any other thing you could do, probably some mix at home or something like that. It would be more dangerous, but, any food would be better than no food. So if you're going to go with fed is best, yeah, I mean, I guess oatmeal is also better than nothing, right? Like you can give your infant oatmeal. It's probably not digest very well, but it's better than letting them starve, obviously. So I don't mean to be insensitive, but I mean, really, like, so let's just be honest about our failures. It's okay to fail in an area. I am a failure in many areas of my life, of my parenting, and it's okay to say that. And you don't have to feel terrible about it because there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. This is not a salvific issue, okay? Like, we don't have to make a huge deal out of it. But I understand we're human beings, we're sensitive, So I always like, when I'm talking to people about this, I'm always like, for example, I wanted to cloth diaper. I think there are also a lot of advantages to cloth diapering. I think that it's good for the environment. I think it's potentially good for the baby's skin, potentially good financially, right? You can use it for all your kids. It's an initial slightly expensive initial investment, but in the long run, it pays out, right? Financially, you can use it for all your kids. Anyway, so I really wanted to do it. I feel like there were a lot of benefits, but I couldn't do it. I failed, you know? I have boxes of diapers right in front of me, speaking to my failure, like as I speak to you, like, because I wanted to. It's not that I've given up yet, but it's like I'm even like daunted. I even find it daunting to even start trying with NT to use the cloth diapers. I saved them because, again, that initial investment was a bit expensive. I was like, failed with the first one doesn't mean I necessarily have to fail with the second one. They're sitting there, okay, collecting dust as I speak to you. I don't know whether I'll be successful this time or not, but I'm ready and willing to admit I failed doing that with Charlie, and I may fail again with NT. That's just what it is. It doesn't mean, I'm overall a terrible mother. It doesn't mean that, um, you know, it doesn't mean that NT is not gonna like thrive in life. Like, it's fine, but there is, in my opinion, cloth diapering is better than, using disposables. That's my opinion. And when it comes to breastfeeding, it is not my opinion. It is a fact that breast milk is better than formula. And we just have to be, to admit that. And I also honestly think baby to breast is better than pumping. I'm going to say that too. So pumping is, I genuinely admire women who are able to pump full time because, again, the milk is the best nutrition for the child. So they're still providing their child with that nutrition. But the work that it takes to pump full time, it's more work than putting the baby to the breast. So I highly admire women who manage to do that and who make the sacrifice to do that. But ultimately, I think for, the other benefits that I mentioned, even when it comes to, to bonding and, etc. I really do think it's best to put your baby to the breast. I think it's best for the mother too, because again, it is less work, and it is safe. But yeah, then pumping, then formula, and bottle feeding and all that. And then, whatever other concoctions people are out here using.